Hey, it's Eric with Painting Business Pro, and in this video, I'm gonna talk to you about how to estimate exterior paint jobs, and I'm gonna make it really simple. So the first thing that we're gonna dive into is the goal of estimating. The purpose of estimating is two things. Number one, you price your job so that you're making the proper profit margins. In this case, we're aiming for 50% gross profit, meaning 50% goes to labor and materials, and 50% is left over for overhead, marketing, and other expenses and profit. The second goal of estimating is that it allows you to pay good money to attract good talent from the labor pool, meaning good painters, good subcontractors, so you have great people working for you. So to start, let's talk about the estimating equation. So there's four main things that we need to come up with our price. The first is the labor cost. The second is the material cost. The third is the total cost. And then the fourth is the markup. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into the labor cost. This is the first thing that we need to figure out. And in order to figure out your labor cost, you need two things. You need to be able to estimate how many hours a job is gonna take you and how much you're gonna pay per hour. So first, let's talk about how we're gonna calculate how many hours are going to be on an exterior paint job. There's three things we're gonna break the exterior down into. First, prep work. Second, body or siding, stucco, etc. And three, trim work. So first is prep. Prep is gonna be the hardest one to bid because it's so different based on where you are in the country. You could have a house out in Colorado that has almost no prep if it was built 7 years ago, and then you could have houses that are in some really tough climates that might have days of prep work included. So prep work is gonna be based on your experience. You have to look at a house and start to peg a number of, this is how many hours of prep I'm budgeting for this house, and then track those hours. And then the next time you bid, you're gonna bid a little bit more accurately every single time. So you need to get your own prep standards dialed in based on how long things are actually taking you in your market. And then you can start to quantify those things so you can get a ballpark for prep hours. If you have no baseline at all for prep, then you need to talk to someone who does, whether it's one of your painters, one of your subcontractors, someone at the paint store, Google other videos, etc., where you can start to get a baseline for how long is it gonna take me actually to prep this house. Now the second thing that we want to bid hours for is siding. So that's going to be everything that's non-trim. It's the body of the house. So if you're spraying wood siding, it's 200 square feet per hour. What that means is we're going to pace out the house and measure it. And if this side of the house is 400 square feet, I divide it by 200, I'm going to bid 2 hours for painting the body of the house on that side of the house. The way we're going to figure that out is get the total square footage, divide it by 200. Now, when you're estimating the time for siding, you're not gonna take out windows, take out brick, and take out things you're masking, because that's part of what's included in the standard of 200 square feet per hour for spraying. If you ask any painter, or you're a painter, you know that if a house is already masked, you can spray way faster than 200 feet per hour. You just think 200 square feet is 20 feet by 10 feet. That's like 20 feet wide by a 10-foot house. You can spray that in like 10 or 15 minutes. The rest of the time we're bidding for is the masking and prep time. So that's how you come up with the hours for spraying your siding. Now, if you're rolling or you're doing stucco, it could be 150 square feet per hour, or even as low as 100 square feet per hour if it's really porous and you need to spray it and back roll it in, etc. Now let's look at trim. So trim, we're gonna estimate at 40 feet per hour. So if you look at a house and all the trim on it, you can literally total up how many linear feet of trim are on the house. Trim is gonna be anything that is trim color. So that is going to include door trim, garage trim, downspouts, fascia and gutters, window trim, vertical trim, and possibly even railings could be included in there. You add up all the linear footage of trim and divide it by 40, and that gives you how many hours for trim. So that's how we're gonna come up with the hours. We're literally gonna bid the hours for prep, we're gonna bid the hours for siding, and we're gonna bid the hours for trim. Add up your total hours. Then how do we get the total labor cost? We take the hours and we multiply it by $20 per hour to get your labor cost. Now I know everyone's gonna say, whoa, Eric, you can't hire painters for $20 an hour. I'm not hiring painters for $20 an hour. I'm bidding for $20 an hour. I'm not paying $20 an hour, I'm bidding for $20 an hour. But all painters paint at a different speed. And if you're a painter, how long does it take you to paint 40 feet of trim? And almost all painters are gonna say, hey, I can paint that in less than an hour, which means you're not gonna make 20 an hour, you're gonna make more than that. All right, so this is just how we bid. It's not how we pay. We're gonna pay in other ways. Right now, we're just talking about estimating, and we're gonna estimate at about 20 bucks an hour. And I've trained people on this across the whole country, and based on these production rates of how long things take, if you do it at $20 an hour, that's gonna end up getting you sufficient margin to pay painters, and good painters will make plenty of money on these standards. Boom, now we've got our labor cost. All right, next up, we got materials. So how are you gonna come up with your material cost? First step is how many gallons is it gonna take to paint this house? And then second, how much does each gallon cost me? So how much each gallon costs you is dependent on your rate at the paint store. So you're gonna know that number. So how are you gonna estimate how many gallons? All right, first let's look at the body. So for the body, it's gonna be the same number of gallons as you estimated hours to paint the body. So if you said, hey, it's gonna take us 12 hours to paint the body, bid about 12 gallons for trim. If you said, hey, it's 200 square feet per hour, it's about 200 square feet per gallon. If you go look at most of the paint that you're using, the paint store is gonna recommend somewhere around 300 square feet per gallon. So we're gonna be estimating to put on a good, thick, healthy coat to cover well and deliver a good paint job. And that's gonna take into account when you are dividing by 100, it's taking into account the more porous surfaces where you're spraying and backrolling because you're going to use more paint. So how you come up with gallons for the body is it's the same number of hours you bid to paint the body. Trim is gonna be anywhere from 4 to 10 gallons of paint for most homes, and that's just a range. So if you're looking at a house and you're like, we don't have much trim here, then maybe it's 4. If it's a house that you're like, it's a big house, we have a lot of trim, err on 10. And then after you do a job, see how many gallons did we actually use, did I bid high or low, and you'll start to tune that in. All right, so that's how you come up with trim. And then for accents, if you've got like an accent door and maybe a few other accents around the house, 1 to 2 gallons for an accent is probably all you need. If you're doing a lot of accents on a house, maybe you need 3 gallons. So you add up the body gallons, trim gallons, accent gallons, that's your total gallons multiplied by your price. Boom, now we've got your material cost for the job. All right, next up, number 3, your total cost. Take your labor cost, which you've already calculated. Take your material cost, which you've already calculated. Add them together. Boom, you've got your total cost for the job. All right, last step. Now we've got to take our markup. So we've added our material and labor costs together. We have our total cost. That's what it's gonna cost us to produce this job for labor and materials. Now we're gonna take that, we're gonna multiply it by 2.4. Why 2.4? Because we're aiming for a 50% profit margin. If all we did was double it, we're not accounting for any of the other little random expenses, like maybe I need a new spray tip, maybe I need more on sundries, tape, plastic, paper, caulking, things like that. And we're not accounting for any like additional expenses we might have. But also, why we multiply by 2.4 is it gives us a little extra wiggle room to provide some discounts to customers, which is gonna really benefit us in the marketing aspect of our business when we can do promotions and discounts and deals. And it's also gonna help us in our sales process when we can offer discounts to customers for doing things in exchange for us, which is gonna end up being really beneficial in the sales process. So at our company, we'll give customers discounts of up to about 10%. And so that extra we've added on, when we discount it by 10%, we're still setting ourselves up to make a 50% profit margin after some of the extra miscellaneous expenses and after discounts. So that's how you're going to come up with your price for estimating the exterior of a paint job. Now, a few things I need to mention. First, of course, this is a huge oversimplification of estimating exterior painting. Are you gonna be a little bit off on the hours if you bid it just like this? Yes. Are you gonna be a little off with your prep? Yes. Are you gonna be a little off with your materials? Yes. You're gonna be a little high or a little low if you use this equation we just went through in this video. And if you're a little high or a little low, that's okay, because we just bid for a 50% profit margin. So if this job you're doing is gonna cost you $2,000, and let's say you were off by a little bit, that means your price is gonna end up around $4,000 or $4,200. So if you end up low by like $600, you're still making $1,600 in gross profit. If you end up a little high, you're making even more profit, or you might lose a job. So that's why I don't recommend doing it this simply, and I'll get to other resources I recommend in a second, but that's the first thing to just acknowledge is this is really simple, but if you use it, it's gonna get you pretty close, and then you've got something to work from and start to improve on from here. All right, so let's just wrap this up with resources that I would recommend to take your estimating a little more detailed, take it to the next level. So there's 3 different things that I'm gonna recommend to you. The first is we have some free estimating guides from Painting Business Pro. Included in those estimating guides are some more detailed spreadsheets to fill out more detailed numbers about how you come up with your hours and how you come up with materials. And we're gonna give you some training videos on how to use those that are gonna be a lot more in-depth than this video. Those are free and they're on their website, and that link will be in the comments. The second thing that we have to offer you is we've got a really detailed estimating training system that's gonna get you incredibly accurate, detailed estimates, taking absolutely everything into account, and you can get your estimates put together in 10 to 15 minutes on spreadsheets. It's gonna create work orders for you, customer invoices for you, and the whole thing, and it's a one-time cost from Painting Business Pro, and we'll put a link to that in the comments as well, and that's gonna be your premier, like as professional as it gets estimating process. The third option you have is there's a couple companies out there that provide software for doing estimates. Those companies are Estimate Rocket and Paint Scout. Both of them provide estimating software, and that's gonna be at a monthly fee. I don't know what their prices are, but you could check those out as well. So those are your 3 different options for getting much more detailed with your estimating. That is what I would recommend doing, whether it's the free version, the Painting Business Pro paid version, or you're using an estimating software. You've got a lot of options available to you, but it's really important that you get your estimating consistent and accurate and profitable every single time, because that's gonna create the necessary foundation for your business to actually grow it, to provide consistent prices, to provide consistent pay, and to make consistent profit while keeping great talent on your team, which makes everything else easier when you're running your business. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to dive into a little bit more detail about how to estimate paint jobs, we'll have a video linked here when we release it. And if you want to dive into more information about interior estimating, we've got a very basic introductory video that you can click right here. So that's all we've got for you today. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it helps you, and we'll see you next time.